You can really spice up your world by adding 3D models that other people have created. Go to the Asset Store. You can press Ctrl 9 if the tab is not there to make it appear. I'm going to click on the Home button. You can search for all kinds of things on the Asset Store. I'm just going to look for a windmill. There's a whole lot of 3D models of windmills that people have created. Some of them cost money, $5, $20, but some of them are free. If you just want to show the free assets, you can check the Free Only button. And now we're getting a pretty good set of things here. I'm going to take this first one, Medieval Windmill, click on it, and download it. I'm going to import everything. You'll see in your Assets folder a new folder show up called Polygrade. I've got the top-down medieval city, windmill free, prefabs. I've got a whole lot of stuff that came down with that import. Go back to Assets. I want to grab one more thing while I'm in the Assets store. I'm going to click the back button. I was going to do a search for a warehouse or some type of object that will have a door in it. So later we're going to hit that door, load a new scene, and be inside of some room. But I'm actually familiar with this low poly medieval buildings. If you download that one also, that will have a good warehouse type building and a lot more. Go to download and import everything. For any of the assets you find in the Assets store, there'll be a description. For instance, this one tells you that it contains 13 materials, 21 meshes. It tells you all the different objects that come within this set of 3D models. And they say all meshes have about 1,000 triangles. The lower the number of triangles, the better it is for a game that you want your performance to stay high in. If you have a whole lot of 3D models in your scene, you need them to be all low poly or low number of triangles. 1,000 triangles for each object is fairly low. So I'm going to go back to the scene view. The low poly medieval buildings is my new folder there. And I want to rename these folders and reorganize them. So I'm going to start first with this Polygrade one. And go into that folder. There's the top-down medieval city folder. I'm going to go into that, and windmill freeze inside of there. So they're putting folders inside of folders with no real apparent need. Now all of these kind of seem like they belong together in this one windmill free folder. I'm going to come back to the top-down medieval city. I'm going to drag the windmill free folder into my assets folder. Now I've got nothing inside of this folder. Now I can delete this Polygrade, which has nothing in it at this point, by right-clicking and saying delete. And instead of calling this windmill free, I'm just going to call it windmill. So click once, pause, click again to select the text and delete that. Just a little more organized there. For the low poly medieval buildings, if I go into there, I see all my prefabs are right inside there. There's no extra folders. I'm just going to go back to my assets folder and rename this to medieval buildings. Remember, you're going to start filling up your assets folder and you want it to remain very organized. Now let's try to bring some of these things into our project. I'm going to start with the windmill, and I do want to go into prefabs, which we'll learn about later. And it does come with a tree. If I want to check that out, I can click once on it and see the tree down here. If I want the tree in my project, I can drag it up and drop it. Notice it's much smaller than the other trees, but that's okay. On the scale, you can resize that. I'll make it 10 by 10 by 10, which is way too big. So let's make that about 3 by 3 by 3. I could add more trees if I want to. I could even drag this tree into the trees game object to keep them organized. What I want is this medieval windmill. I'm going to drag the entire windmill onto the scene. And again, I'm going to change the scale of this. I'm going to make it 3 by 3 by 3. I'm going to move it up and down so it's right inside the ground. I might want to rotate it. And now when I press run, there's my windmill. It's pretty big, but let's go up to the door to see how big it really feels. Go up to the door and it looks like it's about the right height compared to me. Now if I run into it, I go right through the wall. So we're going to have to fix that. I'm going to press escape and hit the play button. And I'm going to add a collider to this windmill so that I can't run through it. We're going to go to Add Component. I'm going to start typing in the word collider until I see a list of colliders I get to choose from, and I want to choose the collider that I think will work good for this object. I'm going to use a capsule collider. There we go, it automatically tries to size it for the object. If I spin around, I can see exactly where that collider is hitting. And you can also edit the size of the collider if you click on the Edit Collider. And when you move your mouse around this green area, you'll see these little dots light up. Those are the things you can click and drag to resize. There's one at the very bottom that I want to drag down so that it goes all the way to the ground. If you click off of here anywhere and you click back on the windmill, then you're not editing the collider anymore. You'll have to click on the Edit Collider button again to make sure you're still editing it. I think that is about what I want. If I run it now and try to run through it, I cannot. I'm hitting that collider everywhere I go. I do notice that there's a gap at the bottom, so it's kind of floating over that edge. So we'll fix that real quick. Press Escape and stop the game. With the windmill selected, use the Move tool. Just drag it down a little bit and notice the collider moves with it. Now let's bring in the warehouse. Remember, we're going to use this later. I'm going to go to the Assets folder. It was under Medieval Buildings. I'm going to add a warehouse. I might want to move it to another location. Spin it around. Change the scale. Right now it's at 100, 100, 100. So I'm going to make it 3 times larger by making it 300, 300, 300. We'll try that when I run it. It's pretty far away, so I have to run for a while to get there. And if I look around this building, I know it's got some spots where it's not very flat. I could either push the train up there in that point, or try to bring the model down some, or maybe even rotate the model. The door I want is actually on the back side. We're going to change that. Also notice if I run through the wall, it's allowing me to run inside of it, which I don't want. I'm going to press Escape, stop the game. I'm going to try to first find a little flatter spot to put it. I'm going to change the size down to 220, 220, and 220. I'm going to rotate it as well so that the door is in the front. The other thing I'm going to do so that I don't have to run all the way back over here when the game starts is I'm going to at least temporarily move my first-person controller. So right now he's starting in that position, and I just want to move him over to the building so I don't have to run all the way over. Gotta make sure that I'm still above ground. Right now I don't see the collider. That is because the character controller is collapsed. If I expand that back out, it opens this up. So let's lift that up and down until we get it touching the ground. There we go. You start seeing it go into the ground, you know where you're at. If I press Run now, run up to the door, and there's the door that I want to be able to go into later. Right now I can run right through it. I also want to be able to run through this little area, but not through the fencing. So I'm going to press Escape. Let's add those colliders. With the warehouse selected, Add Component, start typing collider, and the one I want is a box collider. Notice it went a little further than I wanted it because I don't want it to go over this part here. I'm going to edit that collider by dragging this side in, and I'd rather it be a little too far out than a little too far in because I don't want my camera to go through the wall before I hit the collider. I'd rather hit the collider before I get to the wall. I'm going to need another collider for this spot over here so I can't run through that fencing. I'm going to collapse this box collider, which makes it visually disappear, but it's still there. And I'm going to add another collider, another box collider actually. Now I've got 2 box colliders here. I'm going to open up the second one, which I think is the one we just added. You're actually seeing both the colliders here, but if I click on Edit Collider I can figure out which one's which. I'm going to drag this back side all the way to here. This is the collider I just added. Now I've got the original one that was over the main building, and I've got this other one over the fencing area. It's a little too wide for what I need, so drag those sides in. And now when I run the game, I shouldn't be able to run through the front. Good. If I run around to the back side, I should not be able to run through this area, which I can't, but I should be able to go underneath. I encourage you to look through the asset store, find low poly objects that you want to add to your world, and just make sure at least one of the objects you add does have a door, because we will be going through that door soon.